that engaging Africa at this time, it is a new game that is calling for new rules of engagement, and therefore it is time to re-strategize and treat the Africans fairly.
Will a nation still want to have relations with another if it is forcefully pushed out? No. Most nations wouldn't want to do it, but the US does. The US has been told to take its troops back, but it has yet to take any action. Biden is not ready to let go of its power, despite Niger and Chad not wanting it. They have even found Russia as an alternative. But why is the US still there? How to make them exit? Let's find out. The current shift in geopolitical dynamics in West Africa is characterized by a notable evolution in the region's power structures. This evolution is driven primarily by the increasing influence of Russia, particularly evident in nations like Niger and Chad. Russia's growing footprint across West Africa has prompted concerns among Western powers, notably the United States, about the balance of power in the region. This shift represents a departure from the traditional dominance of Western nations and their alliances, as Russia's assertiveness presents a new narrative and alternative avenues for engagement. It signifies a nuanced recalibration of power dynamics, with Russia's expanding presence reshaping the geopolitical landscape of West Africa and introducing fresh complexities to the region's diplomatic and security equations. But while it is clear Africa is aligning with Russia, America is still not willing to withdraw its troops. Sometimes it wants to leave African nations, and in others, it wants to stay. So, what dilemma does the United States face following the military coup in Niger? The United States faces a dilemma following the military coup in Niger as it grapples with competing imperatives and strategic considerations in its approach to the region. Advocates for maintaining a robust U.S. military presence in regions like Niger and Chad argue from a perspective deeply entrenched in strategic imperatives and security considerations. Their rationale is multifaceted, rooted in the region's geopolitics and broader global security concerns. Firstly, proponents stress the significance of collaboration and partnership with regional allies in countering a spectrum of security threats. West Africa, in particular, has become a hotspot for various challenges, ranging from terrorism to transnational crime. Extremist groups like Boko Haram and the Islamic State in West Africa province have demonstrated their ability to wreak havoc and destabilize entire nations. These organizations often exploit porous borders, weak governance structures, and socio-economic grievances to advance their agendas. In response, maintaining a presence in countries like Niger and Chad allows the U.S. to work closely with local security forces, sharing intelligence, providing training, and conducting joint operations aimed at neutralizing these threats. Secondly, advocates emphasize the indispensable role played by U.S. troops in bolstering regional stability. The presence of American forces serves as a deterrent to potential aggressors and provides a stabilizing influence in an otherwise volatile environment. By supporting local security forces and actively engaging in counterterrorism operations, the U.S. contributes to the maintenance of peace and security not only in Niger and Chad, but also in the broader West African region. This proactive approach is seen as crucial in preventing the spread of extremism and safeguarding American interests abroad. Moreover, proponents caution against the consequences of a precipitous withdrawal. They argue that such a move could undermine years of progress in building relationships with regional partners and cultivating trust among local populations. A vacuum left by the withdrawal of U.S. forces could be swiftly filled by extremist groups eager to exploit the resulting power vacuum. This, in turn, could lead to a resurgence in violence, increased instability, and the erosion of hard-won gains in the fight against terrorism. Furthermore, proponents contend that maintaining troop deployments in Niger and Chad is not just about protecting American interests. It's also about fulfilling international obligations and upholding commitments to global security. In an interconnected world where threats transcend borders, the stability of one region can have far-reaching implications for others. The U.S. demonstrates leadership and solidarity with its allies by remaining actively engaged in West Africa, reinforcing the collective resolve to confront shared challenges. However, some also say the U.S. should end its African military presence. So, what makes them say so? Critics of the current U.S. military deployment strategy in Niger highlight several concerns in the wake of the recent military coup. Firstly, the military coup in Niger has raised questions about the stability and legitimacy of the government, casting doubts on the effectiveness of the existing political structures. However, the new leader mainly stops the US from having too much influence. Simply put, the US is now being pushed out. Moreover, critics argue that maintaining a significant troop presence in Niger risks further entangling the United States in internal conflicts and undermining efforts to support democratic governance and human rights in the region. Foreign military forces can be perceived as interference in domestic affairs and may fuel resentment among local populations. In the context of political instability and uncertainty, the deployment of US troops could inadvertently exacerbate tensions and contribute to the militarization of politics, undermining the prospects for democratic development and civilian rule. Furthermore, critics raise concerns about the potential for mission creep and unintended consequences associated with prolonged military engagement in Niger. While the initial rationale for the deployment of US forces may have been focused on counterterrorism and regional stability, there is a risk that military involvement could expand beyond its original scope, leading to mission drift and unintended entanglements in local conflicts. This could undermine the effectiveness of US efforts to combat terrorism and exacerbate regional security challenges. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. In light of these concerns, critics advocate for a reassessment of the US military presence in Niger and a reevaluation of the broader strategy for engagement in the region. They argue for greater emphasis on diplomatic and development initiatives to address root causes of instability, promote good governance, and strengthen democratic institutions. By prioritizing civilian-led approaches and engaging with local stakeholders, the United States can better support efforts to consolidate democracy and promote respect for human rights in Niger and across West Africa. But this is what is said after just considering US and Niger relations. One important factor here is Russia, which is being missed. Does the specter of Russia's influence affect the decision-making process for US policymakers? Russia's expanding presence and influence in West Africa have emerged as a significant challenge to the United States' traditional dominance and influence. This has prompted policymakers to reevaluate America's role and interests in West Africa and devise appropriate responses to Russia's assertiveness. First and foremost, Russia's increased engagement in West Africa directly challenges the United States' long-standing dominance in shaping the region's political and security landscape. Historically, the US has been a key player in Africa, wielding considerable influence through diplomatic, economic, and military means. However, Russia's strategic actions, including arms sales, military cooperation agreements, and diplomatic initiatives, have enabled it to expand its footprint and gain a foothold in countries traditionally aligned with the US. Apart from this, for the US, Russia's expanding footprint in countries like Niger and Chad complicates efforts to promote stability and security in the region. Policymakers must weigh the potential implications of Russia's engagement on existing security dynamics and assess whether it undermines or complements US objectives in West Africa. The prospect of Russian-backed actors exacerbating instability or complicating peacekeeping efforts adds urgency to the decision-making process. Also, Russia's influence in West Africa impacts broader geopolitical dynamics and strategic alliances, both regionally and globally. Policymakers must consider how Russia's activities in West Africa fit into its broader foreign policy objectives and assess the potential implications for US interests and alliances in other parts of the world. But how is Russia's influence growing in West Africa, and which nations are particularly affected? Russia's influence is growing in West Africa through a multifaceted approach encompassing various sectors and activities. Particularly affected nations include Niger and Chad, where Russia has been actively expanding its presence and influence. Russia's engagement strategy in these countries spans economic investments, military partnerships, and diplomatic initiatives, all aimed at solidifying its foothold in the region. Economically, Russia has been making significant investments in key sectors such as energy and infrastructure, bolstering its economic influence and forging closer ties with local governments. Diplomatically, Russia has been actively engaging with governments and regional organizations to increase its political influence in West Africa. This comprehensive approach underscores Russia's intent to assert itself as a major player in the region and reshape the geopolitical dynamics of West Africa in its favor. And what challenges does Russia's rise pose for the United States in West Africa? Russia's rise in West Africa poses several challenges for the United States, necessitating a careful reassessment of its regional strategies and priorities. Among these challenges is the potential erosion of U.S. influence and interests in West Africa. As Russia expands its presence and deepens its engagement with countries like Niger and Chad, it threatens to undermine traditional Western alliances and partnerships, thereby diminishing America's sway in the region. Additionally, Russia's growing influence could complicate U.S. efforts to promote stability, security, and democracy in West Africa. By offering an alternative narrative and avenues for engagement, Russia may sow discord among regional actors and impede the effectiveness of U.S.-led initiatives. Overall, Russia's rise in West Africa presents a multifaceted challenge to U.S. interests, requiring a nuanced and adaptive response to safeguard American influence and advance its regional strategic objectives. What should the U.S. learn from Russia to strengthen its foothold in Africa? How is Russia expanding its influence in West Africa? And what strategies is it employing? Russia is expanding its influence in West Africa through a multifaceted approach encompassing various strategies tailored to bolster its presence and advance its regional interests. Russia's expanding economic investments in key sectors such as energy, infrastructure, and natural resources in West Africa represent a significant aspect of its strategy to solidify its economic foothold and cultivate closer ties with local governments. This growing economic engagement enhances Russia's leverage in the region and provides avenues for resource extraction and trade partnerships, further deepening its influence. By investing in exploration, production, and infrastructure projects, Russia aims to secure access to vital energy resources while diversifying its supply sources. These investments contribute to host countries' economic development and strengthen Russia's position as a major player in the global energy market. In addition to energy, Russia is also expanding its investments in infrastructure projects across West Africa. Through initiatives such as the Russian Export Center and partnerships with local governments, Russia is financing and constructing critical infrastructure, including roads, railways, ports, and telecommunications networks. These investments facilitate economic development and regional integration and create opportunities for Russian companies to participate in lucrative construction contracts and infrastructure development projects. Furthermore, Russia's investments in natural resources, such as minerals and precious metals, aim to tap into the rich mineral deposits abundant in many West African countries. By acquiring mining rights and establishing joint ventures with local companies, Russia seeks to exploit these resources for export and domestic consumption, bolstering its regional economic interests. Commercial interests do not solely drive Russia's economic engagement in West Africa, but also serve strategic objectives. Russia seeks to strengthen its political influence and leverage in the region by cultivating closer ties with local governments through economic cooperation and investment. These economic partnerships allow Russia to shape regional agendas, forge alliances, and advance its geopolitical goals in competition with other global powers, including the United States and China. Moreover, Russia's economic investments in West Africa are often accompanied by diplomatic initiatives and military cooperation agreements, creating a comprehensive approach to expanding its regional influence. Through a combination of economic, political, and military engagement, Russia aims to position itself as a key player in shaping the future trajectory of West Africa and securing its strategic interests in the process. But are there military relations too? Russia's military engagement in countries like Niger and Chad represents a strategic effort to forge partnerships with local armed forces, providing training, equipment, and logistical support to bolster their capabilities and foster closer military ties. Through these initiatives, Russia aims to position itself as a reliable security partner while enhancing its strategic leverage and expanding its footprint in the region's security landscape. This includes instruction in tactics, techniques, and procedures and specialized training in counterterrorism operations, intelligence gathering, and border security. By enhancing the capabilities of these military forces, Russia seeks to strengthen its ability to combat security threats, including terrorism, insurgency, and transnational crime, thereby contributing to regional stability and security. In addition to training, Russia also supplies military equipment and hardware to its partners in Niger and Chad. This includes a range of weaponry, vehicles, communication systems, and other military hardware designed to enhance the operational effectiveness of local armed forces. By providing modern and sophisticated equipment, Russia not only improves the capabilities of its partner forces, but also establishes itself as a reliable supplier of defense technology and equipment in the region. Furthermore, Russia offers logistical support to its military partners in Niger and Chad, including assistance with maintenance, repair, and sustainment of military equipment and infrastructure. This logistical support ensures the operational readiness of partner forces and enables them to effectively deploy and sustain military operations against security threats. Through these initiatives, Russia aims to cultivate closer military ties with countries in West Africa, positioning itself as a reliable security partner and expanding its influence in the region's security landscape. Russia seeks to enhance its strategic leverage and establish a presence in areas traditionally dominated by other global powers, such as the United States and France, by forging partnerships with local armed forces and providing training, equipment, and logistical support. Moreover, Russia's military engagement in West Africa is not solely driven by commercial interests, but also serves strategic objectives. By establishing itself as a key player in the region's security architecture, Russia aims to shape regional dynamics, advance its geopolitical goals, and counter the influence of rival powers. Russia seeks to establish itself as a prominent actor in West Africa's security landscape through military assistance, diplomatic engagement, and economic cooperation. Diplomatically, Russia is actively engaging with governments and regional organizations in West Africa, leveraging its diplomatic prowess to forge alliances, broker deals, and influence decision-making processes. Through diplomatic initiatives, Russia seeks to increase its political influence and acting space in the region, consolidating its position as a key player in West African affairs. The important question is, how does Russia's approach differ from traditional Western regional alliances? Russia's approach in West Africa differs from traditional Western alliances in several ways, reflecting its distinct geopolitical objectives and strategic priorities in the region. Firstly, Russia's approach is characterized by a pragmatic and transactional stance, focusing on pursuing economic interests and strategic partnerships. Unlike traditional Western alliances, which often prioritize using African nations, Russia's engagement in West Africa emphasizes economic investments, resource extraction, and arms sales with fewer strings attached. Secondly, Russia's approach is also focused on promoting democratic governance and human rights, compared to traditional Western alliances. Thirdly, Russia's approach to building alliances and partnerships in West Africa is characterized by a remarkable degree of flexibility and opportunism, not by historical ties or colonial legacies that may constrain other global powers. This flexibility allows Russia to adopt a pragmatic approach in its engagement with countries in the region, enabling it to pursue relationships with a diverse range of actors, including regimes or groups that may be at odds with Western interests or values. One key advantage of Russia's approach is its ability to eschew the historical baggage and colonial legacies that have shaped the relationships between West African countries and traditional Western powers. Unlike former colonial powers such as France and the United Kingdom, Russia does not carry the same historical burdens or perceptions of neo-colonialism, allowing it to engage with countries in the region on its terms and without the same level of suspicion or resentment. This lack of historical baggage allows Russia to adopt a more flexible and pragmatic approach to building alliances and partnerships in West Africa. Traditional alliances or dependencies do not bind Russia, which is therefore able to pursue relationships with diverse actors, including regimes or groups that the West may view unfavorably. This includes governments with authoritarian tendencies, rebel groups, or non-state actors that may be marginalized or ostracized by the international community. Moreover, Russia's approach is characterized by a willingness to exploit opportunities and capitalize on existing regional grievances or conflicts. Russia has demonstrated a knack for identifying and leveraging political, economic, or security vulnerabilities to its advantage. It offers military assistance, economic incentives, or diplomatic support to countries or groups in exchange for strategic concessions or alignment with Russian interests. By adopting a flexible and opportunistic approach to building alliances and partnerships in West Africa, Russia can expand its influence and presence while challenging traditional Western powers' dominance. This approach enables Russia to cultivate relationships with diverse actors, from governments to rebel groups, and to pursue its strategic objectives with greater agility and adaptability than its rivals. As a result, Russia emerges as a formidable player in West Africa's geopolitical landscape, capable of exerting influence and shaping outcomes in previously unimaginable ways. Do you think that now the US should let Africa? What's the point of holding on to something despite being pushed out? Let us know in the comment section. Do you see a chance of the US and Niger ever getting together as past? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.